June Brown, thank you so much for visiting us from Toronto, Canada. Am I correct? You're in Toronto?
I am.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And please introduce yourself fully. Tell us about your work and please tell us a story.
Thank you, Eric. I am in Toronto, but I'm also have a country home. And my background today is a blanket, but if I looked out my window, that's what I would see. I'm in a forested area, just about an hour outside of Toronto. I belong to Storytelling Toronto. I belong to the York Guild, and I belong to Storytellers of Canada, and I'm their Ontario rep. So I tell to children and I tell to adults and special needs children. And today I have a story. I first heard the story from Nan Gregory in BC, Canada, and then Mats Raymond wrote a book on it. And the story is called The Clay Flute. Once, in a small village at the edge of the desert, a little boy was born with a great gift. It was the gift of music. His father was a poor man, a musician who played not for money, but for the enjoyment of his other villagers, trying to make their life a little bit happier. When the boy was 4 years old, his father began to teach him how to play the lute. Oh, he was amazed at how fast this little boy learned. Music seemed to flow out of his chubby little fingers. And the whole village marveled. And this made the father proud. And that's not a bad thing. But the boy grew up too proud, and that was not good. He made fun of the other boys who practiced just as hard as he did, but didn't have his talent. He laughed at the little girls who tried to kiss him, thinking he would be as sweet as his music. You should be humble, the villagers said. Why, he said, just because other people are jealous of my talent? You should be grateful, his father said. Grateful for what? I'm just good. That's all there is to it. When the boy was 16, he came to his father and said, Father, I'm leaving this small village. There's nothing here for me. I'm going out into the wide world. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be famous. Of course, this made the father sad. Oh, son, he said, I've always wanted to be able to give you a lute of your own, but I've not been able to save enough money to do that. All I have to give you is this. And he reached into his pocket and brought out a small clay flute and handed it to the boy. The boy put it to his mouth and began to blow. And the music was so sweet and wondrous that it rose up into the sky. And just for a moment, the birds stopped to listen. And then the boy thanked his father again and started walking across the desert. He walked and he walked and he walked until he couldn't take another step. And then he sat down on a sand dune to rest. And he took out of his pocket that little flute and began to play. And once again, that wondrous music rose up. And then the air started to shimmer. And standing in front of that boy was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Her skin was luminous. Her black hair tumbled down over her shoulders. Her green eyes were warm and smiling. And her dress, spun with gold and silver threads, glittered like the sunlight on the water. You play well, she said. You have a great gift. I know, he said. That's what everybody tells me. You should be grateful, she said. Grateful for what? I'm just better than everybody else. You should be grateful, she said again. Why, it's just the way it is, he said. And thinking she might want to kiss him like the girls did, he leaned forward, but she didn't kiss him. In front of his eyes, she began to change. Her skin erupted into boils. Her hair became a mass of snakes. Her eyes grew small and angry, and her teeth grew long and pointy. And that beautiful dress changed into a dress of skulls and bones and scales. "You ungrateful monkey," she said. "You do not appreciate your gift of music because it's come to you so easily. Well, stay a monkey," she said, "and see if you can earn your music back. Stay a monkey." All of a sudden, the boy felt a wrenching pain in his body as his bones twisted and turned and his body shrunk until he was a flea-bitten monkey. "Now stay a monkey," she said. "Stay a monkey until someone kisses you just for your music." And the air shimmered and she was gone. The monkey was standing on the sand and dropped the small clay flute. He didn't need that now. He was a monkey. And as he stood there scratching his fleas, the wind began to blow, and grain by grain it covered the small clay flute. The monkey didn't care that it was gone. He ran across the desert. A few days later, he was having a drink at the well of an oasis when some boys spied him, and they started chasing the monkey, pelting him with stones and sticks. The monkey tried to get away, but the boys cornered him against a wall. And I think they would have killed him, except for a kind man that passed by. "Go away," he said to the boys. And he picked up that bruised and battered monkey and took him home to his tent. He laid him on some rags in the corner. A few days later, the monkey was feeling better, and the man was away from the tent. So the monkey started to explore. And in the corner, he found an old lute. Some strings were missing, but the monkey twanged one of the strings. Ping! It sounded familiar to the monkey. He twanged some more strings. Ping, 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 ping. And he kept playing. When the man came home, he stood outside the tent and listened. It almost sounded human. The man was a street performer, and he knew a good thing when he heard it. He went into the tent and he chained the monkey to the bed so he wouldn't run away. And then the next day he took him to the market with him and set him to playing the lute. As the juggler threw up oranges and knives and scarves into the air, the monkey plunked at the lute. Ping, ping, ping. The crowd loved that little monkey. Not because he played well. I mean, he didn't play well, but just because he played at all. And sometimes it actually sounded like a little tune. One day, a wealthy singer was passing by. He saw the crowd showering the juggler and the monkey with copper coins. And he thought, I could use that monkey in my act. It would set me apart from my rivals. And so he gave the juggler a bag of silver, more money than he'd ever dreamed of, and he took the monkey away. The first thing he did was get a decent lute and made sure it was tuned. And then he set the monkey to practicing hour after hour, day after day. And as the monkey's music got better, so did his mind. And one day he remembered that he had once been a talented musician. And oh, how sad he was then, because his monkey fingers, they had none of the dexterity he had had. They were clumsy. But still, he kept playing. And after a while, there were some little riffs and chords. And the singer judged it time to put him into his performance. Well, in a short time, they became famous. So famous that the Caliph heard about them and ordered them to come to the palace and play for him. At the palace, as they were playing, the Caliph's daughter saw the little monkey. "Oh, Daddy," she said, "give that little monkey to me." Well, the Caliph never said no to his little princess, and no one ever said no to the Caliph. And so in short order, the singer found himself outside the palace with a bag of gold in his hand, and the monkey was left inside. The little princess ran up to the monkey. "Oh, you sweet thing," she said. And just then the monkey remembered that if somebody kissed him for his music, the spell would be broken. He could have his human form back. So he leaned forward and puckered his lips. "Ooh," said the princess. "Ooh, that monkey wants to kiss me. Take him away and chain him up over there. Give him a bath." And so the monkey was taken away, bathed, and then brought back to the grand room and chained in the corner. For several weeks, he played for the princess, but then she got tired of him. And so he was taken to a storage room high up in the palace and locked in that room. He probably would have died there except for some kind servants that fed him and cared for him. He had nothing to do but play his lute day after day after day. And the years passed. And as he played, his music got better and better. But oh, the anguish he felt when he remembered his human form, remembered his family. One day, the princess was walking by in the courtyard below as the monkey was up in an open window playing. "Oh my goodness," she said, "I've forgotten all about that monkey." And she had a servant fetch him. When the monkey was presented to her, she said, "Oh, little monkey, tomorrow a foreign prince is coming and going to marry me. And there's going to be a great feast. And you will play before the whole court." And the monkey was taken away. He was bathed and clipped and curled. A little silk vest was made for him, a matching hat. And the next day he was brought to the feast. "Play something happy for our guests," said the princess. And the monkey tried, but he could not. All his longing had been poured into his music, and his music was sad. He could not play a happy note. And as this sad music drifted around the room, the guests, thinking of something sad in their own lives, began to weep. And the foreign prince, he thought about a childhood love he'd had to leave behind, and he began to weep. And the princess, her wedding was ruined. She began to weep. And the Caliph wept with rage that his daughter was so unhappy. "Off with his head," he cried out. And the soldiers drew their swords and rushed at the monkey. He dropped the lute, leaped over the heads of the guests, escaped out a window and out of the city and across the desert. He ran and he ran and he ran until exhausted. He flung himself down onto the sand and fell asleep. Now, listeners, The next part of the story might be hard to believe. But during the night, the wind blew across the desert. And in the morning, when the little monkey woke up, there right beside him, with a little part sticking out of the sand, was his old clay flute. Grateful, oh, so grateful. He picked up that small clay flute. He shook it out, and then he put it to his lips and began to blow. The music rose up into the air. It drifted across the desert, and a Bedouin girl who had been herding some sheep heard it. Oh, she'd never heard music like that. And she came running to find out where it had come from. And she found the little monkey playing. She went over and she said, "Oh, you dear sweet thing." And she bent down and kissed him. The spell was broken. There, standing before her, was the young man. He went home with that Bedouin girl. And a few years later, they were married. He gave up all those plans for fame and fortune and becoming rich. He'd had enough of those. No, today he plays for the enjoyment of the tribe that took him in. And no one is more grateful than his gift of music than the young man himself. And that's the clay flute.
Okay, thank you so much. So he recovered from his arrogance.
I think so. We do sometimes underestimate our gifts.
Mhm.
What a wonderful story. Your vocabulary is so rich. It shimmers as your speech does. The story was beautifully told. Thank you for that gift this morning.
Thank you.
Hmm. So where did you find that story, June?
I first heard it from a Canadian storyteller, Nan Gregory from British Columbia, quite a long time ago, maybe 20 some years, 25 years ago. And then Mats Raymond from Sweden wrote a book based on a desert witch, and he called that the Clay Flute. It's different from what I told today, but about a desert witch and a young boy and a gift of music.
Mm-hmm. He didn't need. Oh, go ahead.
I just, June, I just love I love this story for so many reasons. I think similar to that, how an old story can still feel very modern and relate to what we feel now. This whole idea of the monkey mind and needing to go into music and keep working and it's just excruciating being a human being with a monkey mind, right? With this incredible capacity that we also have and trying to bring that forward. So I was so moved by the story itself and the way that you told it. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
He didn't need to pucker his lips, right? Because it didn't have to be a mutual kiss on the lips. It just, he needed to be kissed by somebody.
That's right.
So he didn't understand, and he wasn't ready at that time for the spell to be broken.
He was still a 16-year-old mind.
Mhm. Hmm. Okay, well, he went and made his way in the world.
and he found out what was important.
Mm-hmm. Sherry.
June, I'm wondering at the point in the story where you make the apology that this might not be very believable, drop that out. Instead, have him sit down. Oh, there's something poking me, and have him feel around and find the clay flute instead. Then you don't interrupt the story.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
Just a suggestion, rather than suddenly inserting the narrator, the storyteller, you're having the story still flow. And
Okay,
it's
I'll
such
take
a
that.
beautifully
I'll
told
try that next
story.
time.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for that help.
Really love the story. Thank you.
It was just a mystical thing, right? That the flute appeared.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if no one else has anything to add, we'll complete the discussion. Thank you so much, June. That was really beautiful.
You're welcome.
Great.